Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway, a nostalgic look back at our favorite Rangers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Tom Browning.
With my co-hosts, Rob Berger and Mike Browning.
We can be heard on Google Play, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and of course, our website at gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. That's gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. Please check it out. You can capture all of our episodes on our webpage. You can contact us by just clicking on the contact bar. You can leave a message. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about the players that you would like for us to profile. Love to hear about maybe some of the seasons other than the 60s, 70s, and 80s that really made an impact on you as a fan. Again, we will be going off the menu every once in a while. We'll be talking about the current day New York Rangers, the state of the franchise, previous playoff games, impactful trades that took place in New York Rangers history. So wherever you listen to us, please hit subscribe. It's free. So without further ado,
here are your hosts, Tom Browning, Mike Browning, and Rob Berger.
Thanks for tuning in and welcome to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway podcast. It's been a long time. It's great to be back. I'm Tom Browning, along with my broadcast partners, Rob Berger, and my son, Mike Browning. Guys, it's been a long time. It's great to be back. Welcome to the podcast. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to focus today's show on the Rangers season. And there's been a lot that's gone on, obviously, since our last podcast in the January-February timeframe. So let's get to it. Why don't we start off with, the Rangers wrap-up, if you will. Everything's in play, whatever you want to talk about. Touch on the Stanley Cup playoffs, too. Rob, you want to start off with your thoughts on how the Rangers season ended? What's in store, and just your thoughts.
Yeah, I think my take might be a little different from you guys in that I don't have as much of a emotional connection to this team or to this franchise, if you will, right? I'm sticking with what I said before the season started. Going into the season, this wasn't a playoff team, in my opinion. And I think they played to where I expected them to play. They did well. They had some hot streaks when they got to play the worst team, the lesser teams in the division. Had some crazy games that, I hope people don't forget when they scored all those goals, like just insanity, right? That was so much fun. And I think Ranger fans, with the exception of their ownership, should be super excited about the future. I think the future is bright for this organization. Tons of picks. There's going to be money to be spent. The only, really only one big RFA right now, Pavel Buchnevich. Other than that, I mean, Chytl, I guess you could say the same about Chytl. He probably not as important. He's only 21, so it'll be interesting what they do there, and we can talk about that. But I think Ranger fans should be optimistic. Before even watching the playoffs, they are not better than Boston or the Islanders or Pittsburgh or Washington. So, and I think Shesterkin was in the top 10 of goaltenders all year in his first full season. Nothing to worry about there. So, yeah, I'd be curious to see from a more diehard fan perspective how you guys feel.
Mike?
Well, for me, when was the last time there's been any season in Rangers history? And this is a Rangers history show, so maybe you could tell me, when was the last time there has been this much drama in a single season? It's just unbelievable, from start to finish. You had the K-Andre Miller situation. You had the Tony DeAngelo situation. You had, the way that things wrapped up at the end of the year with the team losing those games and the entire front office getting fired. That with intertwined with storylines of the team being young and is this a playoff team or is it not? How good is this coach really? Is this a fit? Are the players developing well? And it was just a roller coaster ride the entire way. Add to that the COVID situation, and I don't think there's ever been a season quite like this one. So I think a lot of the points that could be taken out of the season, the positive things may have been buried a little bit, but I think Rob's dead on that. What you can take away is that the future is extremely bright. This team is full of talent, young players that are poised to make a huge impact. Our cap situation is quite good, full of picks and prospects. So we'll see what this new kind of coaching regime and front office regime will do. But I will say it. I've never seen a season quite like this one.
Well, it's funny you mentioned drama. I didn't see it quite the same way. I think drama dovetails a lot with expectations. And I think, as Rob said, I think it was misguided if anyone had expectations of this team really making a mark this year. You'd have to go back to 1975, Mike and Rob. You talk about drama. Well, Rangers were eliminated by the New York Islanders, right, in the playoffs. And right after that, you had that next season. You had Emil Francis being fired. You had Brad Park, Jean Rattel being traded to the Boston Bruins for Phil Esposito and Carol Vadnais. You had John Ferguson after he replaced Emil Francis. You had Ricky Middleton being traded for Ken Hodge. I mean, you had a tremendous amount of drama because the expectations were so high. Squished in, compacted into a very short period of time. So there was a lot of drama with the New York Rangers in the 70s. The late 70s, you had the Rangers giving up a first-round draft pick for Freddie Shero, the two-time Stanley Cup winning coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. And his very first year, he takes the Rangers to the Stanley Cup Finals against Montreal. And you had so much drama in the New York Rangers in the mid-70s, early 70s, losing to the very first expansion team in the Stanley Cup, the Philadelphia Flyers, beating them up in 73, 74. I mean, the Rangers were loaded with drama in the 1970s. They were in 1994. You had the drama with Mike Keenan leaving the Rangers, threatening to leave the Rangers even before they won the Cup, and then actually following through on it after they won the Stanley Cup and a one-year coach winning the Cup. So there's been a lot of Ranger drama that tied into a team that had very high expectations. I don't see it quite the same way. I didn't see a lot of drama this year. I just didn't. I just saw a team that really has some promise, as Rob says, but I think they've got a long way to go. I think we might be overstating their potential a little bit because this is a team that has a lot of holes. They have some youngsters. They have some skill. But there's very little balance with the big club, and there's very little balance in the minor league system right now. They just don't have a lot of skill depth in the minor leagues as far as the forwards go. Goaltending, to me, is still very much in question. If anything, I was less impressed with the goaltending after this year than I was going into the season. Rob, you mentioned Shesterkin being in the top 10. I don't know how that could possibly be because he didn't beat anybody in the varsity this year. His record against the Capitals, Islanders, Penguins, and Bruins was 6-16. Georgiev was, I think, 7-7. The only teams that he beat up on Shesterkin were the Devils and the Buffalo Sabres. I was very disappointed in Shesterkin's play against the big clubs of varsity this year. I think he's got a long way to go to sell himself to the Ranger faithful as the goaltender of the future. I think Sorokin dramatically outplayed him this year. Dramatically. And if Georgiev is a question mark now, which to a lot of Ranger fans he's a question mark, where does that leave the Rangers, who we thought goaltending was their strength as an organization? Even the kids, Adam Huska, and he had a very shaky year. I just don't know where all this, I don't know about the future. I think they have a way to go. And now you got a coaching change coming in. I don't know. I think a lot remains to be seen. Drury's got a humongous job ahead of him, fortifying this organization from a coaching point of view, from a depth point of view. They need physicality on this team desperately. I mean, this team was ravaged by physical teams this year, ravaged, especially in the last couple of weeks in the season. I mean, Matt Martin and Tom Wilson just single-handedly wrecked the Rangers season the last couple of weeks. Wrecked them, but, taking guys out of the lineup. And if anything, this playoff is showing just how much a 200-foot game matters. Physicality matters. And they are a long way of plugging in physical players to protect their youngsters, protect the skilled players, to give them the time and space. So that's my look at it. I hope they can I hope they have a good draft. I really do. I hope they can fill in, maybe use some of these kids and bring in some good physical, young, skilled player. We don't need goons. We have no need for goons. We don't need Tanner Glass. We don't need any of those types. We need guys that can play, who are physical and tough, who play a 200-foot game. And that's job one for Chris Drury.
Yeah, so the thing with Shesterkin is to remember is context of those games. When those games, you talk about what was the record, 6-16, I think you said,
something like that. Yeah.
Regardless, not a substantial losing record. The Rangers got destroyed in those games, and he faced so many high quality shots in those games that that's what elevates him to the top 10. Is that sure he wasn't winning those games, but in context of what he faced, this is different from a goalie. So as good of, like, for example, as good of a year as Vasilevsky had, he has a strong defense in front of him. The same goes for, Shesterkin didn't have to deal with like a Nedeljkovic had to do in Carolina, which the defense was so much better. You're right, though. He obviously played better against those teams. If you look at that division, I'll respectfully disagree. I think he's ahead of Sorokin right now. I'm not saying he will be in 5 years. I'm just saying right now.
How can you say that after watching the two of them play and the way they? I mean, Sorokin was unbelievable. I mean, and Barry Trotz is now. They're not one to give out praise. That easily. Sorokin had an outstanding rookie season. I mean,
he did. Yeah. I'm not saying he didn't. I think Shesterkin was put in more difficult situation with if you're going to compare the Islanders defense to the Rangers defense, there's no comparison, right? I think you'd agree with that. The Islanders play such a different game.
Well, they got Pulak and Pelech.
I'm not saying Sorokin's bad. I'm not saying Sorokin's bad, and I'm not saying 5 years from now, who knows what it'll be. But for this year, Shesterkin was the second best goaltender in the division for the season.
I don't see it. No, I don't see
who was better. Who was better than Varlamov in the division?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said who's. Oh, okay. I thought.
Oh, in the division, not the league. No,
I thought you said Shesterkin. I think you said.
No, I did say Shesterkin was the second to best goaltender in the division this year.
No, he wasn't.
Who was better?
Tuukka Rask was better. Even the
he was.
Even the backup.
No,
Tuukka Rask did not have a good year at all. Tuukka Rask had a below average season for himself.
You can't look at a goaltender without looking at the team in front of him. I mean, look at Barry Trotz is a defensive architect. Like, you look at the makeup of the Capitals changed dramatically just by one season of him not being there. And you look at, the goalies that have played under him, and when they go somewhere else, they're just dramatically worse. I mean, there's so much context when you look at a goaltender performance. You can't just look at the goalie themselves. You just can't. I mean, you really can't. You have to look at the defensive structure that they play. Like Rob was saying, the amount of high danger shots that they face, the amount of expected goals, like how many saves are they supposed to make relative to the saves that they actually do? How many saves that they're not supposed to make relative to the saves that they actually do? So it's a whole kind of matrix of data that you have to look at when assessing goaltending. And just to say one goaltender led in more goals than the other is just a very short-sighted look at this.
Well, then how do you account for Georgiev then beating the Islanders and beating the Bruins? I mean, he had at least I think he had actually a winning record, if not a 500 record. He had the same defense in front of him, and he owned the Islanders. He beat the Bruins a couple of times. How do you account for that?
Okay, well if you're going to account for that, he also had worse games against other teams.
He played down to his competition, no doubt about it. And that's why there's a question mark about Georgiev this year. But he played better against the varsity, far better than Shesterkin. I think you guys are making excuses for Shesterkin. You're getting all involved, wrapped up in this.
It's not excuses. It's he had a good season. He was, and it's for me to say he's the second best goaltender in the division is a big.
That's a leap. That's a humongous.
At the end of the day, it's a so what. He played better than Vanacek in Washington, who was thrown in for what it's worth. He wasn't supposed to be, and Samsonov doesn't count, right? Because he was beat up. Carter Hart was the worst goaltender in hockey this year.
Right.
Even worse than Matt Murray was. Carter Hart had. I mean, Philly should be. I don't know. I was wrong. I don't know if I can't remember how we talked about in the show. I thought Philly was going to win the division. I thought Carter Hart was going to be the Vezina finalist, and I was very wrong. I hate using this word, advanced stats, because that's a silly thing to say, but I hate that expression. He was at the bottom of that. He was at the bottom of goals against and save percentage, everything that they had to shut him down. And then Rask didn't play a full season, and he wasn't that great when he was in. Tristan Jarry, for the vast majority of the season, was a below-average goaltender. Casey DeSmith had to pick up a huge load, and if Casey DeSmith was healthy, he comes in against the Islanders. I mean, Tristan Jarry blew 3 of those games against the Islanders. the Penguins own that series. And so, I mean, so there you go. And Buffalo, I mean, oh, poor Buffalo's lucky we don't have the soccer model where they get relegated, because man, were they bad. It's like when Taylor Hall left. I think it may have been the greatest day of his life.
Yeah.
Connor Hart was definitely the biggest disappointment amongst all goaltenders this year. Who would have thought that Connor Hart would have the year that he did?
There was a lot of disappointments among goaltenders this year. A lot of bad goalies in the league.
Yeah. But how about the kid who came in from Rask? How about the kid who...
Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, he was outstanding.
10 solid games.
He was better than Shesterkin. He was a lot better than Shesterkin.
To say he's
why don't we just package Kaapo Kakko, Lafreniere, Nils Lundqvist, K'Andre Miller, and our other top 5 prospects for Vasilevsky?
Mike, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Year, right?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I think
that's a great question though. Who, just because we're kind of at an impasse here with all the big discussions about big trades going into the future. And Tom, you said they have a lot of work to do. I don't disagree with that. Who is untouchable?
Nobody. I don't think there's, except for Lafreniere. Lafreniere, I think, has got to be untouchable, and maybe Fox.
Not even Miller?
I don't know. Well, first of all, Miller got off to a great start. He was physical in the beginning of the season. I don't know if he wore down, but he relied way too much on his stick in the last 25, 30 games of the season. He became Mark Stahl in the last 15, 20 games of the season. Physicality disappeared, and he was nothing but a stick checker. I mean, he needs a guy that can teach him. Maybe Ashara comes, maybe they sign him for a year to teach K'Andre Miller how to play physical defense. But
we have no spots left on our entire defense. How are we going to bring in Zdeno Chara? I mean, we just signed Nils Lundqvist. He's probably, he might be the top D prospect in the entire NHL. So what does that leave? I mean, we have no spots left.
Well, wait a second. Wait a second. Would it be a total tragedy if, God forbid, Kaapo Kakko, Nils Lundqvist, Jones, and a few other guys, Chytl, started the season in Hartford and played maybe 30 or 40 games, earning first-line minutes to really give them the ice time and the experience that they need? I mean, would it be that much of a freaking tragedy that Nils Lundqvist did not start with the big club next year?
I would say absolutely. Since Chytl's one of our best forwards, I would say absolutely that would be a tragedy. So I wouldn't want to put him in Hartford when he's one of our best two-way forwards.
Do you think the Rangers are any closer to a playoff team next year than they were last year?
Yes. Well, they better be.
Why? Why? No. Why?
Because I think they'll all be better.
Yeah, but they still are not.
Except for Fox.
They still don't have.
These are elite players, and if we go another year without improving, the cap situation constricts us even more. I mean, you have to, when you in the NHL in a hard salary cap league, there has to be clear trajectories for each of these players based on the amount of money that they're making, based on their entry level contracts. And if these guys who are drafted super high don't start competing and becoming top players on the team, then all of a sudden your cap situation goes from really good to really, really, really bad.
All right. So Mike, answer me this question. Answer this question. So everyone knows that the 4 major ingredients to being a Stanley Cup contender, right, is being skillful. You got to have skill. You have to have physicality, play 200-foot game. You got to be good on faceoffs, and you need good goaltending. So who's going to wave that pixie dust onto the current Rangers roster where we already have, and Rob has mentioned this, they don't have the balance, they don't have the ingredients this year to be a formidable or a serious Stanley Cup playoff contender. This roster it's not changing unless they bring in those components, strong face-off guys, physicality that's going to protect their skilled players who play a 200-foot game, maturation.
Listen, that pixie dust, I mean, you're talking about pixie dust. That pixie dust the NHL is going to be choking on pixie dust pretty soon. There's going to be trades up the yin-yang with the draft. With the expansion draft, with the regular draft coming up, the Rangers having the number 15 pick that they probably won't make. A lot of star players are available, both via trade and free agency. Jack Eichel is out there. I mean, the Rangers are going to look nothing. I mean, and look at the talent backlog that the Rangers have on defense. I mean, you have Fox, K'Andre Miller, Jones, and Nils Lundqvist coming to the main roster.
And Jones is 20.
Yeah, and then you have Matthew Robertson named WHL Central Division Defenseman of the Year, and you have Braden Schneider named WHL East Division Defenseman Player of the Year. He played a couple games in the AHL last year because of COVID. So these guys are in the pipeline now too. So what are you going to do? I mean, that's what I'm saying with Zdeno Chara coming up. I mean, Zdeno Chara you brought up. I'm like, no, because there's no room on the Rangers blue line for this to happen. I mean, you gotta start figuring out what you're going to do with this talent that's in the pipeline, and the fact that you do have holes on the varsity roster that you need to fill. So are the Rangers going to fill it? Are they going to sprinkle that pixie dust on the roster? They absolutely are. So it's just a matter of what they're going to do.
All right. So if they're gonna go with 2 to 3, and they need 2 to 3 physical, strong forwards that can also score goals, who can play the game, right? Who's going to be?
So what do you give up? Should have traded Strome.
Well, that's my point. And on defense, who's going to protect? Who's going to protect the little defensemen like Adam Fox and Nils Lundqvist and Jones? Who are the guys that go in and play physical and teach these kids how to play physical? If all these young kids are going to be up with the big club, I mean, do we have to genuflect with all these first-round picks and not expect them to produce in Hartford before they come up to the big club? Look at Wahlstrom. Wahlstrom played like 35 games this year, and he led all the first and second-year Ranger rookies with, I think, 14 goals. I mean, come on. I mean, give me a break with bringing these kids up. Nils Lundqvist is going to start the team with the Rangers this year? Are you kidding me?
Where's Wahlstrom been when the Islanders have been getting outshot 2-1 and can't get a goal to save their lives?
Mike, he's hurt. He's been playing. He hasn't played the last 2 games because he's injured. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And Kravtsov actually put his in pro hockey, in one of the best leagues in the world, put his team on his back in the playoffs. His team that was very, very bad put his team and actually led them to playoff success despite all odds.
And he scored 2 goals. He scored 2 goals with the Rangers in 18 games.
Yeah, on the fourth line.
With a
coach that's been fired.
Okay.
And he didn't really get any minutes. I mean, like, he wasn't getting minutes. Look, the positive thing about the Rangers is how many guys they have under the age of 22.
It doesn't matter, Rob. I don't care if they're 40 years old.
Look at all the good teams. Look at the teams that are playing right now. None of them can say that because they're older. That's why the future is bright, because Kakko is 20, Lafreniere is 19, Miller is 21, Adam Fox is 23. Good chance he's going to win the Norris. I mean, so Lindgren is 23, Zach Jones is 20. These guys are kids, but I'm saying that's point. Why I'm so positive. Like,
no. Listen, I agree with that. But that's my point. You answered my.
21.
Rob. I think we're misunderstanding each other here. That's my point. They are so young, they could spend a year or two until they can come up at 22, 23 years old and make the big club after getting first-line minutes, first team.
I agree completely, but I think that ship has sailed. I think if that's going to be, that needs to be the organization's philosophy.
Oh, so let's continue to take shortcuts.
So can't go down. Guys that played full seasons in the NHL, you cannot send back down. That doesn't make any that doesn't help them. They've seen the top talent in the world. They're not going to grow in the American League. They need to, but I agree though. I think too many guys, I think Jack Hughes is an example, guys that, I think, I love to bring up the Kings. I think they've done a great job with that, is that they keep guys in the minors as long as possible.
Yeah.
But I disagree. I do not think guys that have played a full season, and Chytl's even played more than that, should go back down. I don't think that.
Chytl's a veteran. Chytl's a veteran.
He's 21.
He's an NHL veteran, and he's a 21-year-old. He's been playing since he's been a young 18-year-old, and he's been playing against the best offensive players on the other team. He's been the Rangers, for the most part. I mean, he's been one of the Rangers' top, given the Rangers' top defensive assignments. So to say that he should go to the AHL, I mean, and he doesn't even get that many minutes. To say that he belongs in the AHL, I think is just wrong.
God forbid they play 40 games. God forbid they play 35, 40 games in the AHL before they bring him up next year in February. God forbid. That would be the worst thing for him.
It would be. It absolutely would be. To take a guy who's Keandre Miller, who's played top minutes in the NHL against the top talent, and say, all right, you're going back. First of all, that'd be terrible for confidence to say we don't think you can get better after watching you for a full season. But I agree with you that hopefully, that should be the philosophy moving forward. Let these guys mature. That, it's so rare to see guys. I mean, how many 18, 19-year-olds have that kind of success? It's such a small amount. I mean, there's some examples, some did it right. Like, perfect example, Florida with Aaron Ekblad, but he played against the bottom lines every game. Barely, I think he barely played on the penalty kill his rookie year. And the Rangers have too much youth to protect guys like that. They're forced to play tough minutes. And so I agree with you. But I don't know how you can't send Miller down.
Well, I wasn't, when I was saying that, I'm not really referring to Miller. Not referring to Miller. I'm referring to Chytl, Kakko, Kravtsov, and a few, and Niels Lundqvist, who's just signed, Jones. Those are the guys I'm basically referring to. Matthew Robertson, Braden Schneider, if he comes up with the, if he plays minor league hockey next year. Those are the guys I'm talking about.
Chytl has 186 games in the NHL. Chytl's played 186 games in the NHL.
Yeah, and how productive has he been?
Very.
He's never averaged more than 15 minutes a game. Like, he doesn't play top minutes. The time to send him down was before this season, or maybe actually was before last season. He played 75 games 2 years ago. He played 60 games last year. Those are full seasons. He played 42 this year. I mean,
between last year and this year, he's improved his points per game by almost 30%. So he plays on an offensive team. How many goals did he score last year? How many goals did he score this year?
Yeah, not a lot.
Uh-huh. Exactly right. Exactly
I don't
right.
know. Sending him back to
exactly right. Yep. Exactly right.
How does that help?
Yeah, these guys have earned their keep on the big club this year with all their productivity over the last couple of years. No doubt about that. And you got to look at teams like the Bruins and the Islanders and all those teams that have veteran leadership, who've got guys like Beauvillier who paid the price in the minor leagues. Even Barzal has some time in the minor league system. Wallstrom didn't come right up right away. I mean, let's face it, there is a recipe for success, and this club hasn't had it in a long time. And, Rob, frankly, I'm surprised.
Beauvillier played 3 games in the AHL.
How much?
3.
That's all he played?
Yes.
3 games, okay. All right, then I stand corrected.
And Barzal didn't play any.
Well, he was a first-round draft pick, right? I mean, that was a little different.
Also,
that's not fair. He shouldn't. You're right. Yeah, Barzal. Yeah, but Barzal had the advantage of coming up and playing games. He played a couple games after being drafted. Where guys like Lafreniere didn't have. And I think that makes a difference too. Where he had that off season with the Islanders. Where he
played on a veteran team too. I mean, he played on guys that gave him the time and space and everything else. The Rangers had all these kids thrown into the mix right up front, which,
yes.
I mean,
which stinks. This is how many times have we said it? The Rangers, I would rather the Rangers be really bad with a group of veterans that are like 35. It's too late now for that. But like 3 years ago, like 35-year-old guys, and just kind of like teams like the Kings did, or like the Blackhawks did 10 years ago, or the Bruins did 15 years ago, and be bad while the youth can mature in the minors.
Yeah.
And the Rangers are always hanging on right below, right? They're a couple, 5th place, 9th place out of 8, 10th place out of 8. They're never at the bottom. They're forcing kids to play when I don't disagree that they couldn't mature these kids like they should have.
Well, we talked about who's untouchable. I guess to me, there aren't that many guys that have earned, untouchable status. Obviously, there's a couple, right? But I mean, who's going to coach the team? And I don't know who the unrestricted free agents are. I don't know if Drury is already in talks about trades. Obviously, they're going to have to trade guys to actually get skilled physical players onto the team because there's nobody in the minor leagues that fits the bill. So they're going to have to go outside the organization, make a deal for at least 2 or 3 bangers, 2 or 3 physical forwards that are going to protect the smaller players on the team. And again, we're not talking about goons. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Brad Marchand types, physical players that can play the game as well. Again,
this is why I was screaming 2 years ago or a year ago, whenever it was, to not sign Kreider, to trade Strom, because they weren't ready to win. And
right.
Now they're wrapped up. Well, Strom isn't really wrapped up. Strom only has 1 year left. But like flipped, 2 years ago when like everybody knew there was no cup in the immediate future.
Right.
That wasn't like a shocking, like it's right.
Right.
Nobody thought that a couple of years ago. So why not train? It's so frustrating when teams. We just thought, we talked about this a couple days ago, like fighting for those 2 home games in the playoffs, so Dolan can get his gate and his ticket sales, is so frustrating.
We talked about this, Rob, at earlier podcasts. The next Rangers Stanley Cup was not going to have Henrik Lundqvist or Chris Kreider on the team. They should have been traded years ago, where they had some market value. Those guys were not going to play on the next Rangers Stanley Cup. And Kreider, I know he's got a no trade, but they should try to make something very attractive for him to be moved. I mean, he probably has some value. If he doesn't have to be the physical guy on the team, the leader, if he's just a follower, if he goes to a team that's heavy with leadership, I could see him doing well with a team like Boston, where they will protect Kreider. I mean, it's kind of sad to say that a big guy like that needs protection, but he won't play a physical game unless he's surrounded by 8 or 9 teammates that will play a physical game for him. That's when he will thrive.
Yeah, I mean,
he needs to play on a physical team where he doesn't have to worry about doing that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, he gets Superman muscles when he's playing on a team with 8 or 9 guys that will protect him. They should try to move him for some players, some talent.
Adam Pelech, go after Adam Pelech. He's an RFA.
Yeah, well, it's Casey Cizikas. I know he's a free agent too, so they should definitely look into signing him. Although I think the Islanders won't let him go. How about coaching, guys? What do you think? Who do you like as far as potential coaches? Mike?
I think am I muted? Yeah, I think Gallant's the guy. I just think they need a coach who's going to come in and help this roster take the next step. I really don't know if the next guy is going to be the coach that leads into a Stanley Cup, but I think the next guy has to come in, even if he's only here for 2 or 3 seasons, to make them a perennial contender, to really bring along the evolution of Lafreniere and Kakko, and then some of the young defensemen that they have, and maybe they bring in somebody after that, if necessary, who's going to be the guy that actually brings them along the finish line. But I think, doing a postmortem on Quinn, it's clear that he just wasn't very good at developing these guys. He wasn't giving the right guys enough ice time. He was giving some guys too much. He just had, a fascination with some guys who really didn't even factor into the future, like Brett Howden, who probably shouldn't have even been on the roster. But he was giving Howden some nights more minutes than Chytl. He was giving Howden consistently more minutes than Lafreniere, and it just didn't make sense. And even after the, some of his press conferences, infamously, he once said, oh, this guy, I forget who he was talking about, didn't get enough minutes. I didn't even realize that. That's my fault. And it's like, well, yeah, that's pretty much one of the main functions of a coach. It's one of the main responsibilities of a coach. And the fact that he said that was very eye-opening to me, and kind of really told the story about how he was a little bit in over his head. He was a little bit inept when it came to the pro game, and probably a little bit naive as well. Yeah,
on the one hand, I agree, Mike. I think his in-game managing of the lines left a lot to be desired. But on the other hand, you had a good half dozen guys on the team that had their best years under him. Strome really developed under him. Zibanejad had his best years under him. Buchnevich came out of that, inconsistent player. He's a better hockey player now. Lindgren, he developed Lindgren into an excellent defensive player. Adam Fox came on the scene and he did well. So it was kind of a mixed bag with him.
Just because guys played well under him doesn't mean that he developed them. I would say, correlation does not equal causation always. So, I think Buchnevich has always been, he might have been a little bit of a late bloomer, but I think the skills were always there. Speaking of guys who play a physical game with a surly attitude, I think he definitely fits that bill, and should definitely be kept. Tried to be kept, unless he gets traded for like Eichel or something. But I don't know how much Quinn really developed those guys, just as much as maybe a coincidence, or just maybe they played better under his style or something like that. But I wouldn't factor that in when considering the new coach. I just think that you have to assume at this point that whoever comes in to coach, Strome is going to be a solid 2C. Zibanejad is going to be your 1C. And, Buchnevich you'll be able to count on, that kind of thing. So I think Gallant's a good guy who could come in, and you saw what he did with Vegas, a brand new team. with a lot of young players. Florida too. So I think he's got a good track record, and I think he brings what a team in a situation that the New York Rangers are in really needs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely. What do you guys think about Rick Tocchet?
He's already had 2 interviews. Reports have that he's met with Drury twice now.
I'm not as high on him, but I think there are worse options. I would be disappointed if it wasn't Gallant. So I know that it seems like Tocchet is definitely on the short list.
Yeah.
Hard to say if he's the top guy or if someone else is going to come in after his interviews. But I guess we probably won't see until after the season anyway. So
well, it should be interesting. I was hoping that Rob, you mentioned this to me yesterday. I guess Rob Brindamore has basically signed a contract already. It's just a matter of
he's not leaving Carolina.
No.
Even, I mean, they got such a great thing, and it's a shame that they have so many injuries right now that they're dealing with.
Yeah, they still won the other night though. They actually
Mrazek looked good.
Yeah,
they're such a solid team, but I don't know what's going on with Trocheck, and they're banged up.
How about Knobloch?
Yeah.
How about Knobloch? I mean, he came up and he did well when he sat in for Quinn when Quinn was on the sick leave there. I mean, Rob, you mentioned all the goals they scored during those crazy 2 weeks. That was under Knobloch. They scored all those goals.
Yeah.
Should he get some consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why not. I mean, so much of it depends on what Drury's plan is, right?
Yeah.
Like and what's going to happen with the expansion draft. I agree with Mike. I think this is going to be a crazy offseason. Nobody, after like the first half of the first round, really like even the first 10 picks, nobody really knows. So many of these guys didn't play this year, right?
Yep.
I think a ton of draft picks are going to be flipped for that reason. I personally am of the mind. I like to see new blood and new coaches.
Yeah.
I kind of like that Detroit has committed to Blashill for this whole rebuild. They're writing it out with him, and he's part of it. I can't say whether or not I could be completely wrong about outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just personally like it. I've expressed this before. I want to see when teams commit to rebuild. Let's do it. Let's get the GM. This goes for all sports. You get your GM, you get a coach, and build something, and give it time. I think it's so just that letter that the Rangers put in the newspaper, a couple or whatever they posted. It was so disingenuous. They never meant to rebuild or anything. It's very frustrating. You look at team. I was almost going to say the Houston.
I think
I'm not gonna do that.
I think their intentions were sincere at that time because I think Gorton wanted to do it. I think Sather actually wanted to do it, and I think Dolan signed off on thinking that in 2 or 3 years we'll actually be contenders, and then obviously he sees the Islanders do what they did to Rangers in the last couple of weeks, and there's almost the Ed Snyder effect. And if you know anything about the history of the Philadelphia Flyers, it was Ed Snyder, the owner of the Flyers, changed the entire corporate culture of that team after the St. Louis Blues just physically humiliated the Flyers back in the 67, 68, 69 playoffs. And, the Plager brothers did a number. Al Arbor, who was playing at the time for St. Louis, they just physically abused the Philadelphia Flyers, who, because of their connection to the Quebec junior leagues, minor league system, they had a lot of French-Canadian players in the beginning of the Flyers' history. They got just wrecked, and he said there's not going to be another Flyer team that will ever be physically intimidated. We're going to be the intimidator. And from that day forward, they became obviously the history speaks for itself. And Dolan, I think, kind of acted the same way. He just saw how Tom Wilson and Matt Martin and the Islanders just abused his young team. And obviously Gorton and Davidson didn't agree, or I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but he just had enough. And I think that caused the whole thing to go down. The only guy I'm going to miss, I think, is Gorton. I would have liked to have seen Gorton get 1 year, at least one more year, because he came from the Boston Bruins organization. I think he wanted to build that team in that image. I think this year he probably would have gone after some physical players to complement the young kids. If you heard Quinn all throughout his press conferences, I think that was his goal too. He wanted to field a physical hockey team with skilled players. He just didn't last long enough to see that through. And I think if Gorton had stayed, Quinn would have stayed as well. But it's going to, like Mike said, it's going to be up to Drury, and Rob, you said the same. It's going to have to be up to Drury to build this organization.
Well, I think that's what Drury's going to be. That's going to be a top priority for him. I think he really is going to. I think there is a mandate, whether it's public or not, to go out and get some tougher players. I think the Rangers are going to trade a lot of picks. I think the Rangers are going to trade some big time prospects. There's a lot on the table. There's there's Eichel. There's some other top 6 tough guys that I think that they have their eyes on. There might be a dark horse like a Barkov type player that they have their eye on. So we'll see.
But those guys aren't physical players, though.
No, but they round out some of the they round out the Rangers' top 6 right now, I think. And you do build those are guys you do build a team around. And no, they would still go out and get tough players for sure. But at the same time, as far as who the coach will be, I think the Rangers did take a step back under Quinn. So, I think you would have liked to have seen more development, at least offensively, from Kakko. You'd have liked to see more from Lafreniere, and even Dad, like you mentioned, you would have liked to see more from Chytl offensively, even though I thought he played really well, two-way game, and especially defensively. So you might have to get a guy, like I said, who's just there for a year or two with the focus and intent on developing these guys, getting these guys more, ingrained, indoctrinated into the system, working on developing their skills, working on developing them as professional hockey players, and then see where that goes. Whether that's the guy you move forward with and you think, you could win a Stanley Cup with, or you bring in somebody else who's more, used to coaching a team with veteran players that's more ready for the Stanley Cup, like, sorry for saying it, but like AV or something like that. Not AV specifically, but somebody like that. Maybe that's what you do. Maybe it's a 2-step process, but we'll see.
Oh, good point, Mike. Or you bring in some bring in some young talent, maybe assistant coaches from winning organizations, maybe like some of the Islander assistant coaches, or Bruins assistant coaches, or Avalanche assistant coaches, or Lightning. Somebody that's been working along with the head coach who is ready to take the next step. Maybe guys that we don't know about, guys you haven't heard their names mentioned, but play a prominent role in getting these teams prepared and playing well in the playoffs. Maybe there's someone there that Drury knows, there's new blood, if you will, but also brings that Stanley Cup contending mindset to the organization. Maybe that's what happens. Who knows, right?
Yeah. And, like you said, these guys on contending teams, no one, they know exactly what it's like to work with elite players who in many cases have won cups before, have been, a part of elite organizations that have gone all the way. And if they're ready to take the next step in their career, they bring that perspective with them. And maybe they, have some fresher ideas than a more established coach, or can relate better to players, which might be indispensable for a young team like the Rangers. So I think Drury is, he himself is a young executive who is a little bit more kind of innovative than the established guys that seem to, circulate around the league every year. So, yeah, I think maybe it is a guy that we haven't thought of to be the next coach.
Well, who'd have thought Sullivan would have been a 2-time Stanley Cup champion when he was with Tortorella with the Rangers, right?
Exactly.
Or when Tortorella had his first stint as a Ranger coach back in, I guess it was around 2000. He coached Rangers for about 20 games. Before Rennie was hired, I guess it was, he preceded Rennie, and he wound up becoming a Stanley Cup winning team with the Lightning before he came back for his second stint as the full-time head coach of the Rangers. So, although I don't know if Sullivan, Rob, I don't think Sullivan would be, I don't know if he's the guy I would want for the Rangers. I think he's more of a skill coach. I don't know if he, I think he fits the Penguins better than he does the Rangers. What do you think?
Well, I don't think you have to worry about it. Mike Sullivan isn't leaving Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, there was rumors.
I know, but I mean, I know because now they've got Burke and they have
Hextall.
And Hextall. Man, Jari let them down.
Yeah.
They should be playing Boston right now.
Sure
That's
did.
another thing. I mean, let's not forget. I know there's so much excitement about the Islanders, but they are not a championship team. And I know they'd be a different story if they had Anders Lee. But they got a lot. They have a lot of work to do this offseason as well. they've got the issue with. I mean, do you want to keep Varlamov unprotected? Because Sorokin is an RFA.
Yeah.
Restricted, yeah, but he's restricted. He's not going anywhere.
He's not going where I know, but he's going to want money.
Yeah. I know Beauvillier has come up big a few times in the playoffs too, but you have to remember he has 3 or 4 full seasons under his belt, and he's never had more than 30, 33 points in his career. So, what do you have with him? He's probably going to be an RFA here pretty soon, and especially some of these younger guys and, the Brock Nelsons and of the world, those types of guys are getting older. So,
Brock Nelson's only 29, 30. I'll tell you, the Islanders, I don't know if any team has a strength down the middle like they do. I mean, with Barzell and with
no, but they're all locked. So Barzell, yes, there's nothing wrong there. You build around him, but the Josh Baileys and Brock Nelsons of the world are locked up for a very long time, and they're approaching that kind of witching hour of NHL careers where the AAV that they're signed for doesn't match the output. The 29, 30, 31 with, still with 4 or 5 years left on their contracts.
Yeah.
So if there's ever been a win now team, the New York Islanders are it.
No, sure.
So they'll be at a crossroads. Yeah. They'll be at a crossroads here soon with some of their younger guys and see what they have, and some of their older guys with their contracts and no moving clauses. And I don't know if the situation there is so peachy, especially with the way that they're kind of been getting dominated throughout almost every single game of the playoffs, and wouldn't really even be here if not for really good goaltending.
Well, that's what wins in the Stanley Cups, right? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah. Listen, Rask has been excellent in this series. He was so good last night, especially.
He was incredible.
My goodness. And, it's crazy to think that he's playing. You have guys like Varlamov and Rask that they were playing in the playoffs 11 years ago.
Yeah,
which is nuts to think that how long these guys have been around. Boston, Krejci and Hall are free agents, UFAs.
And Varlamov is a guy who I was talking about as a type of guy who he really reflects. He's kind of like a chameleon that reflects the coaching and system that he's in. He's been around for so long. He's had good years. He's had bad years. He's looked great on teams like the Islanders. He's looked terrible on teams like Colorado.
He's been before he was in New York, he was terrible in the playoffs with Washington.
Well, except for one. Don't forget when Varlamov first came up, he upset the Rangers. He outplayed Lindqvist in that series. People said, Varlamov who? And everyone said, we have Lundqvist, we had the big advantage, and Varlamov stole that playoffs from the Rangers, and he outplayed Lundqvist. So Varlamov has some history there, and he's matured into an outstanding goaltender. He really is. And that crazy goal last night, but he's been very tough for the Bruins.
He had a great year.
Quality goalie. He's an NHL quality goalie that reflects the system that he's in.
Yeah, he led the league in goals saved above expected. I mean, he had a great year. He could have been. I'm not surprised, but I think I would have put him over Grubauer in the top 3 for Vezina, just based on. I don't think Grubauer was that great, and he's on the best team in hockey.
Right. Well, we have to end this segment pretty quick. So just one other thing, food for thought, and I know a lot of Ranger fans have thought about this. If Gorton knew, or if John Davidson knew that, and how could you not know, if Barry Trotz was going to become available, if there was some friction or dissension within Washington not paying Trotz, if there was any chance that thing could have blown up on the Capitals, why didn't they wait a month and a half, 2 months, if it even took that long, and bring Barry Trotz into the New York Rangers? I mean, not that he would have taken the job because of the makeup of the roster, but I mean, you got to at least make a phone call and see if he'd be interested in
Maybe he did.
Well, if they did,
there's no way to know he didn't.
Well, I think it would have gotten.
I don't think they were looking at him. I think they were looking at college coaches and AHL coaches the whole way. To your point, I really don't even think they were thinking about him. I think their thought process was, we're a young team, a rebuilding team with a ton of young guys. We need a coach that can relate and that's more developmental focused. And I think they just greatly miscalculated with Quinn.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It should be interesting. I don't know if we resolved anything tonight as far as the future of the Rangers.
Do we ever?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what it's. We'll just have to see what's going to be in. Once we get through this cup. Hey, I think one thing we can agree on, at least the Rangers aren't the Maple Leafs.
Well,
absolutely, and that goes for this year. That goes for last year. That goes for every year.
I mean, I even think there's some Sabre fans that are like, "Oof, that sucks."
The Maple Leafs remind a lot of Ranger fans of the Rangers of the early '70s when they had an incredibly skilled team and they just got beat up by the Bruins and the Flyers. And the Maple Leafs remind me, Rob, we talked about this yesterday. In
but they won playoff series at least.
No, they were sort of the Rangers back then. Rangers upset the Montreal.
No, that's what I'm saying.
No,
the Leafs
the Rangers
won the playoff series.
Yeah, the Leafs haven't won.
Oh, I understand. No, I understand. But my point is, they just don't play a 200-foot game, even in the playoffs, and that's what does them in every year. I mean, Montreal physically beat them up in this series. They just kind of remind me a lot of Ranger teams, the post-mortems of those Ranger teams back then. The Maple Leafs are saying the exact same thing. It just reminds me a lot of those teams, Yeah. So let's wrap this up real quick. Rob, a final thought on the Rangers and your prediction for the Stanley Cup winner, and then Mike, you do the same. Rob, we'll start with you.
I implore all of you angry Ranger fans to stay positive. The future is bright. There are guys that will be superstars. Adam Fox is only 23, potential Norris winner this year, and Colorado, right? I can't imagine anybody knocking off Colorado right now. That team is so good.
Wow, Mike.
Well, yeah, Colorado is the goal, right? That's the team the Rangers want to become one day. So we'll see what happens, and I think if we go out and get a Jack Eichel or Barkov type player, that becomes a reality. So they're the odds-on favorite to win the Stanley Cup for a reason. But I have a dark horse that my gut says might make some noise. That's the Canadiens.
Wow.
I think I'll say the Canadiens come through and they shock a lot of teams. And Carey Price finally lives up to the hype and uses his combination of experience and skill and technique to really hold it down and steal some games and shock a lot of teams. And the Canadiens bring the Stanley Cup to Canada for the first time.
Wow, that would be awesome.
He had that great Game 6 and Game 1 against Toronto. I'm not as optimistic as you are, but hey, it'd be cool to. I guess it would be cool. Although that Montreal media.
Well,
I know. There would be drawbacks for sure.
There'd be drawbacks for sure.
That team's got a great combination of experience and youth, and they've got guys that have won before. They got Eric Stahl on the team, Corey Perry, and that's like their fourth line. And then they have guys like Suzuki and Kakko who've been playing really well. So they're an intriguing team. Plus, they have Price back there. So we'll see.
My only concern is what happens when they go to Boston or the Coliseum or in Tampa and they have to play in front of a crowd for the first time. I think that would screw everything up. Because they're not used to playing with fans. So I don't know. I think that could be a real major problem for any of the Canadian, for Montreal, the last team standing. As far as I think it's going to be Boston and Colorado. And if the Islanders don't wear out the Bruins, I like Boston to win it. If the Islanders keep on knocking out guys like Carlo in the series, if they just wear Boston down, then I think Colorado's got a great shot. As far as the Rangers go, I think we're gonna have a hint during the draft in the summer of how much of an influence Dolan's going to have on Drury. If they start trading a lot of assets for mediocre veterans, or if the trading deadline in February results in something similar, like we saw with Sather when he first came on the scene and traded away a lot of young talent, brought in a lot of washed-up players, that sets the Rangers back 10 years, I think we're going to know that by the trade deadline in February whether this rebuild is really legitimate, if Jervy's going to, stay the course, or if Dolan's going to wreck everything. I think that's my fear, my worry, that Dolan's going to want an instant fix, a quick fix, and that would just be awful for the New York Ranger organization. So that's kind of my feeling on things. So Mike, Rob, great show. It's good to be back. We'll figure out what our summer schedule is going to be. For the fans, thanks for tuning in. Apologize for the 3-month lag time here, a little medical issue that I had to take care of. It was great talking about the Rangers wrap-up, Stanley Cup projections. So on behalf of Rob Berger and Mike Browning, this is Tom Browning saying thank you again for tuning in to the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. Thank you for listening. This has been a Go Tommy Boy production.